First Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 6 and 7 says, and you became followers of us, Paul's writing. He says, you became followers of us and of the Lord, having received the word in much affliction with joy of the Holy Spirit, so that you became examples to all in Macedonia and Achaia who believe. And so this church in Thessalonica, as I shared before, when they received the word and lives were being changed and being exemplified through Jason, okay, who's dragged out of his house, it wasn't like they got saved and everything was like perfect and wonderful. They got saved and then persecution came and suffering. And what Paul is saying here is that the evidence of God's work, or God being at work in their life, was that in the middle of their suffering, they were filled with joy. They were filled with joy. Joy came out. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't complaining. It wasn't feeling sorry for themselves. No, in the middle of their suffering, joy. And it became a witness to those around, because people are looking and going, man, they're really going through it. And yet they got joy. Where does that come from? How are you able to do that? And the word joy here is the word kara. It means gladness, cheerfulness, calm delight. It's a noun. It's not a verb. It's a thing. It's not something we do. It's not something we put on. It's something that we are. And we are that because of the fruit of the Spirit, because of the power of the Spirit at work in our lives, producing the fruit. God producing the fruit of joy, not us pretending, acting, putting on a good face, having a good mental perspective. No, it's God growing the fruit of joy in our lives. And have you ever watched somebody walk through suffering and being filled with joy? It's a beautiful, amazing thing. I've had the opportunity many times. And what's interesting is oftentimes you don't find out that they were going through something until after. Because while they're walking through it, joy so sustains them. The joy of the Lord is so much their strength that you don't even know, that you wouldn't even know unless you knew. Does that make sense? And it's true. It's like afterward you find out, oh man, they were going through this, and you're thinking, wow, I wouldn't even have known, because the joy of the Lord sustained them. And that's what was going on in the church in Thessalonica. And this is what Paul is praising God for. This is what he is considering noteworthy. He's like, you guys are going through it, and I'm hearing about it from all these people that you're doing it joyfully. And you're becoming an example to all in Macedonia and Achaia. So not just your little city, but through the entire region. It says in verse 8 this, for from you the word of the Lord has sounded forth, not only in Macedonia and Achaia, but also in every place. Your faith toward God has gone out, so that we do not need to say anything. Paul's like, I don't even have to go and talk about it, because they're hearing about the work of God in your life. And that word sounded forth, it's the word exkeo, and it means this, to thunder. It's a trumpet blast. So if you can kind of think about it this way, there's this cosmopolitan city, Thessalonica, and the witness of what God is doing in the lives of these people is reverberating. It's reverberating. It's like a trumpet blast throughout the region. It's echoing and resounding, and people are like telling people, and then they're telling people, and they're telling people, and it's going on and on and on. And that word eskeo, it only happens one time in the New Testament, and it's here. So the work that God was doing in these people was profound. It was powerful. It was such a powerful witness that Paul's saying it doesn't even require any explanation. I don't even need to explain. It's evident. It stood alone. A commentator by the name of Clark says this, the mere preaching of the gospel has done much to convince and convert sinners, but the lives of sincere followers of Christ, illustrative of the truth of these doctrines, have done much more. Much more. Your witness in the circle that you live in and the places that you go, your witness will do much more than you ever just telling people. That we don't just, yes, we do need to tell people about Jesus, but we also need to be living it out. And that witness of living it out will say a lot more to them. It will go a lot further. And the evidence, if you go on in verse 9, it says, for they themselves declared concerning us what manner of entry we had to you, and how you turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God. So the evidence that God had been doing a work in their life was, yes, the joy, okay? But there was also something else. It says that you also turned, that there was a transformation. You turned to God away from idols. Okay, now, idolatry, when we think of idolatry in America, we think of, things that we put before God, but he's talking about literal idols here, okay? In fact, it was 20 years ago that my husband and I had an opportunity to go to Israel. And when we were there, we also saw Greece. And I remember stopping in Greece, and our the lady that was doing our tour, the guide, she wasn't a Christian. And we were there in the bus, and we're like ready to stop and ready to go see Greece. And as we're stopping, she says, okay, everybody, go buy your idols. Everybody go buy your idols. Go buy your icons. Actually, it was icons. Go buy your icons. And I'm like, what? And they literally sold little icons that you could buy and that you could worship. And so it's still existing there today. And so these Christians, idolatry was huge. Sexual perversion was huge. Drunkenness was huge. It was all wrapped up together in this perverse worship. Of idols, sexuality, drunkenness, all of it was wrapped together. And so when these Christians in Thessalonica, when they became Christians and their lives were changing, they had joy while they were being persecuted, but they were also literally turning to God away from this lifestyle. That there was a transformation that happened, that they broke their idols. Literally, they were no longer drunk. They were no longer being dishonest. They were no longer involved in sexual immorality. Their lives were being changed. And Spurgeon writes this. He says, our converts are our best advertisements. And I would add, me, not Spurgeon, that our posers, our phonies, are our worst. And yet, when we see somebody's life who has been absolutely transformed by the gospel, it's the power of God at work. It's what the gospel is. When Jesus in Luke 4, verse 18, is such a cool scene. Jesus, he gets up, he goes into the temple, he opens the book, he reads Isaiah, and he makes a lot of people mad that day. He opens it up and he says this. He says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are being oppressed, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. What Jesus was saying that day is this: salvation is now available to all. And yes, it is the forgiveness of your sins, but it also includes all these other things too. It's a transformed life. It's comprehensive. And I pray, and I pray that you've experienced those things in your life, because the gospel is transformative. And so as I got to this place in my study, it's a time for introspection. I'm like, Lord, what areas, where have you transformed my life? Where have you healed me? What have you set me free from? Where have I seen the miraculous occur in my life? Because if our lives have been touched by God, then there should be his fingerprints all over it, right? It's like that song that's out right now, Evidence. It's a great song because it's true. Because if our lives have been touched by God, then we should see the evidence of it all over the place. And that's what the song says. I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, all over my life. I pray that that's true for you today. And it was true for these Christians in Thessalonica. Their lives had been changed. Their lives had been transformed. Their witness was real. They were serious about God, and they were serious about the gospel. Last week, my husband and I, my family, we had an opportunity to go to Utah to a vacation, and it was so awesome. We stayed at this KOA, and it was literally like right across the street from mountain biking, which my husband and my son love to do. And so they could literally just like mountain bike or like just ride to it. And it was so cool. And one day they were off doing that, and I was with the other kids, and we were walking back from the pool. And you know, when you go camping, what do? You like pretty much like check out everybody's rigs, right? You're like, wow, look at that, and look at that. And because like people got some serious stuff going on. And it was that day, and we were looking, and I was like, man, I mean, we had like these older men, I'm not going to say an age because I don't want to offend anybody, but we had some old guys that were like these dune buggies that were like tricked out. You had the rigs that were just insane, like TVs coming out of the side, and you had people, mountain bikers. And I just remember looking around, and later that day I told my husband, I'm like, man, these people are serious about recreation. I mean, they're serious. It's obvious. It's evident. They don't have to come and tell me, hey, I'm serious about what I have going on here. No, it's obvious. And it got me thinking about my own life. And the question that the Lord asked me is, what are you serious about? What are you serious about? It's a good question. I ask you that now. What are you serious about? A better question, maybe a harder question, is it evident to others? Is it evident to others? Could people look at your life and go, man, he or she is serious about this? And if you really want to take a chance, you could ask your spouse, although I don't know, they have to live with you, so I don't know if they'd be completely honest with you. If you want a real honest answer, ask your kids. Say, hey, what do you think mom, what do you think dad is serious about? Because whatever it is, it should be evident. And it was evident in the lives of these Christians in Thessalonica. And the thing that's going to change the world that we live in, the things that it's going to change the trajectory of people's lives, is seeing Christians that are serious about Jesus, whose lives are being transformed by Jesus, who are not ashamed of the gospel of God, but are ready to proclaim it and live it out, who can walk through suffering and have joy come out. That's what the world needs to see. That's the Jesus that we serve. He's real. He's real, and we really need to share him. God bless you.